I want to welcome you to Something to Talk About, a program we do several times a week here at the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. And we appreciate your participation. It wouldn't be anything without you. We also want to thank Fieldstone Memory Care of Bainbridge Island, which sponsors these programs. They offer day stay and respite programs in addition to innovative and compassionate memory care. Call 360-689-4314 and schedule a tour of their beautifully appointed apartments on Rolling Bay today. We'd also like to acknowledge that the Senior Community Center is on the ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, specifically our neighbors of the Suquamish tribe, the people of the clear salt water. We honor them and we are grateful for their hospitality. Today, we are going to talk with what used to be called the Inclusion Study Group, but Anne, we've got a new name, don't we?
We do, and I think it's a great name. It's called the IDEA Group because it's an acronym some people were saying DEI for diversity, inclusion, and equity, but then other people were like, well, you don't want to go DIE, that would be bad, right? So IDEA is inclusion, diversity, equity, and then the A can be a lot of different things. It could be A for ally, it could be A for activist, it could be A for apathy, it could be A for super annoying, it could be A for a lot of things, right? And
my favorite is accessibility.
Accessibility, exactly. And I think we'll do some programs on some of these things, but by adopting this new acronym, we're also kind of broadening the scope of these programs. And again, we're always open to your suggestions for things you'd like to talk about or hear about. And
or people you think we should talk with.
Exactly. Definitely right.
So today we're going to talk a little bit about equity.
Yeah. The topic is economic diversity on Bainbridge Island. And I think some people have said, why? There isn't any. And it's like, that's kind of the point. And B, there actually is, but it's sort of invisible. And that's something that I would like to call out and have us have a bit of a conversation about. As always in these things, you are very welcome to jump in. I have to just say, I don't always see a person's hand being raised, especially if it's against a background that's a difficult color. I am having my cataract taken off on Friday, so maybe that will help. But in the meantime, wave or something like that so that I can see you and know if you have a question. Or you can always put something in the chat if that's easier. But I would really encourage your participation and questions and comments and stories, because that's kind of how we discover what's really going on in our beautiful community, right? Mm-hmm. One thing about this economic diversity that I find really fascinating is that all the research shows that economic diversity creates much healthier, stronger, more resilient communities. It makes more vibrant communities. It makes more sustainable communities. And yet, the pockets of privilege I've been classically kind of not really super interested in opening up to many kinds of diversity, including the economic diversity. I guess I can start off with a little story. For a number of years, I was on the waiting list at Ferncliff Village for affordable housing. And because I like to normalize things that are maybe not always something people really want to talk about, I would tell that to everybody I talked to. And a lot of people were shocked and surprised and said, oh, are you okay? Or even, aren't you worried about being with like those people? Like that maybe, they'll strip your car. And I'd say, have you seen my car? But also the implication is they, them, right? That those people, and the word affordability for a lot of people brings up the image of truly homeless people or people who have no means at all. Whereas in reality, affordable housing is for people like me. I'm living on Social Security pretty much. People like teachers and firefighters who don't have the means necessarily to live on beautiful Bainbridge Island. And if you know anything about Ferncliff Village, it's an awesome collection of really interesting people, great people that you would love to know, right? And so I'm curious about this dual thing of, there's a lovely feeling that we should support affordable housing because it's the kind, good, compassionate thing to do. But as we see with the project that Bethany Church is proposing, some neighbors don't like the idea of affordable housing being too close to their beautiful mansion homes. Just saying. So I'm curious if any others of you have ideas about this or have experienced anything like that or have stories like this. Marcy, you probably do.
But yeah, well, the only thing I have to say is because I helped bring what was once a low income living community here. The problem is that it is very much not low income anymore. So we've got a big division between no matter what we offer on this island at the moment is not affordable. Is not just not low income, it's not even affordable for most people, middle income. So, and then we're fighting back. The HRB is trying to build another, besides the one at Bethany, they're working on Erickson and Nectel right now. If you're interested, just to follow what they're doing and can support their ability to get that passed, because every month that we don't pass these, the price of doing anything is skyrocketing, and it may stop their ability to bring us even what they have in line right now.
Exactly. And your community, your own community started as affordable, right?
Well, which I say, yeah, 1/3 of us were low income besides being affordable.
Right.
And then when we had but we only could manage to do it because 1 or 2 people actually had bank accounts and could talk to the bank, because we couldn't have gotten a mortgage without anybody able to sign papers.
Exactly.
So it's not easy.
Whoa.
Yeah, that
The mobile home
happened.
park is no better.
That happened
So-
with a mobile home park where you live now, Anne, right? Is that
Yes.
thanks to some people who helped bridge the gap, we were
Well,
able to
in
keep.
fact, yes, there were angel investors, all of whom got paid back to their astonishment. I think they didn't. Mickey, could you mute there, girl? Thanks. I think the angel investors were astonished to be paid back. They didn't know they were going to get their money back, but they all did. And also the city. Kobe stepped up and bought 7 of the lots shares. And we own our land in common, but in exchange for preserving the park, we gave up all development rights and made a contract with the city, which still stands, that instead we will not develop and create more high rises. And in fact, just above us, there are now 52 units in what used to be 12 mobile homes of the walk, right? But even here in the park, because we are an affordable housing co-op with HUD regulation, we still are seeing affordability disappear because people come in, maybe they take out an old mobile home that is really beyond repair and bring in a beautiful new one, which is not really inexpensive, and maybe they gut an older one and fix it up, and maybe suddenly it's not affordable anymore. Some of the newer places would be selling for $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, and that is crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting because in Curtis Loop, Ferncliff Village, that you were talking about before, HRB is trying to avoid that by trying to make contracts that try to keep the ground and the level at which you can sell the house for under some governors, if you will.
Yeah, it's been deeded in perpetuity, and that did not happen here. And I think that didn't happen in your community either, Marcy.
No, it's the same reason I could not convince people we were taking such a big risk. Nobody wanted to not nobody, but 90% did not want to tie themselves up to something without being able to get their full investment back. And what's going on at Ferncliff is very common. There is also limited equity co-ops that are very popular in California, and they follow the same thing. You get back what you put in, and then you get back any investment you made for upgrading, and then you get a percentage, but it's in perpetuity. And so I think that the ones that, I don't, it's always at old rentals at Bethany. So they're talking only rental.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't, would just be rentals for, they would be at low income rental price forever, or for 99 years or something, not a sale, but there's no sale price.
And I think people would be a bit surprised to know what the low income qualification is, because for a single person, it's like $55,000 a year
Yeah.
income. And for a family of four, it's like, I think it's $78,000 a year or something like that, or more. And we don't consider that low income necessarily. And yet in today's world, it is. But those would be moderate incomes or modest incomes. And that's a big perception problem, I think, for the whole sort of economic diversity issue, because there's a big split between what people think would like to support intellectually, and then the actual situation arising can cause some people to really feel like maybe they feel almost afraid or threatened at the idea that people from different backgrounds will be coming here. Right?
Yeah, Mickey.
Mickey, yeah.
I'm not opposed to the Eagle. I know this is backtracking, but I'm not opposed to the area for the church where they're thinking of donating the property. What I'm opposed to is all the traffic that it's going to be bringing. It's a small area. It's streets on both sides. It's already congested with the high school traffic, the traffic coming from our end of the I tried to get through the high school a couple weeks ago just to go to the doctor at 8 o'clock. It took me 20 minutes to get through that area. So the traffic is getting worse and worse. And of all the areas to have it, I just think there's better areas than that small piece of property. I understand why it's not a wealthy looking neighborhood. There aren't fancy homes. So I don't know why they're doing that area.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's available, and it's really hard to get people who are willing to give up the really expensive real estate dirt around here for affordable housing. So it makes it difficult if you aren't going to be a charitable organization like HRB or Bethany Lutheran to come up with the gumption to give up your property at less than it could achieve at the highest bidder. I mean, that's a complicated thing. Rita.
Well, and also it's centrally located so people can walk. So somebody like me might be able to afford an apartment to rent. I have, you know, I wasn't able to put money away to save. And I live with my children. They have provided a spot for me, but I'm way north on the island, and I have to have a car, and I can still drive. But in the wintertime, it's bad. If there may not be as many people with cars there at all. And when you have families that need to be able to be close to schools and to be in a place, living together is not awful. It's not awful, but we have become so accustomed to live apart on our stuff that it's kind of crazy. When I was growing up, I'm the oldest of 8 children, and so there were 10 of us with the adults, and we lived mostly in small, not even 1,000 square feet homes. And we always lived on the wrong side of the tracks because we were poor, low income. And I think sometimes we forget about that. Just because we don't have a lot of money doesn't mean we won't appreciate what's there, that we won't take care of it. And that is better as we get older. I'm on a list for Finch. It's going to take maybe 3 years to be able to get down there. And I'm just praying that I can get down there. Because if anything happens and the children decide to move or anything happens, I'm going to be a bag lady under the bridge.
No, you'll be sleeping on my sofa.
exactly. But I mean, but it's a frightening thought. And then you've got young families that have a couple of kids that are trying to work. They're trying to, live a decent life. They'd like their kids to go to college, and they don't have a decent, affordable place, an affordable place that they can go. I really think that, this whole traffic thing, people need to maybe walk a little more. Maybe we can get the buses going a little more. And until we do some of that, it's not going to change.
And there's talk of experimenting with a circulator bus in addition to the Kitsap Transit BI ride. Yeah, because I feel like, well, anybody recognizing what's going on with gasoline, it's like we need. I can't tell you. I was a short-term substitute school bus driver for the district. How many kids show up, or their parents show up in individual cars to go to school? And I know I had that problem with my own children. It's like, I want to drive to school. I want to drive to school. And I wasn't the, I didn't always say no by any means. So I appreciate it's like, and we just have to get over that as a culture, that idea that we're all going to have two cars in the garage in a single family home that's separate from everybody. I would love to see more ADUs, accessory dwelling units on property where people who might own a home could rent property at a more reasonable rate. Right now, it's like, if you can't afford the $1 million home, you can't afford to live here.
No.
Yeah, the median price on the island is just over $1 million now. Really?
Right. And living together, I think we really, I'm a single woman, have been for a long time, older. I would love to be in a spot where there's a bunch of, people my age that we could do things together, or food together, cook, and do some of those things. And I think that it would really be healthy for all of us. And I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully I can help facilitate something in that direction. Thanks.
It's just interesting, isn't it, that, for all over the world, multi-generational homes are the norm. And yet here it seems to be somehow considered a horrible burden or shameful or something to get out of as quickly as possible. And yet, what's not to love about, living with grandkids and grandparents and having real family?
Well,
right?
in his book, Being Mortal, Atul Gawande says it's not all it's cracked. There's a reason. There's a reason everybody moved apart, because it wasn't always easy to live in that kind of multi-generational community. You might have the patriarch who isn't quite willing to give up the head of the household role, even when maybe he isn't the only person who needs to speak all the time, or those kinds of things. And he said in his book, there's no magic bullet here. It's living in community one way or another. And we have a lot of people who find themselves lonely and alone at the end of their lives, because we haven't figured out the magic bullet that doesn't exist. It's probably in between those two things. I feel really fortunate that my father has enough means that he's able to live right in Winslow, and I can see him every day, but he's not in my living room all the time. And he probably appreciates I'm not in his too.
Well, I've had at different times my entire family coming back, yo-yoing, I think they call it. So kids coming back, and my late husband's kid coming, cycling through, and my mother, right, and in her last years. And I have to say, it works extremely well if you have a very large house, but maybe not so well if in a crowded space. I mean, that was one of the pieces I think that did make it successful. But yeah, you're right. It's hard because living in community is hard, because we all have foibles. We are all broken people, and trying to figure out how to do that better is, to me, part of the challenge of building better culture, building a better society.
Lena has her
It
hand up.
also
Oh,
doesn't
Lena.
help with the diversity. We're talking diversity. This is not the diversity. Economic diversity is not what we're talking about at the moment.
Well, it kind of is, Marcy, because part of the point is if you can afford to live in a great big huge house and have two people living there, or maybe you can't. And what do we have available for people who can't afford that? But let's hear from Lena. Sorry, Lena. You're muted.
Sorry, how's that? Everybody can hear me now? Sorry, I kind of jumped in a little bit late, so I apologize. I kind of missed the conversation leading into this. So I'm trying to, put these pieces together. I heard about you guys chatting about multi-generational households. I personally have that exact story. I live in a multi-generational home. My 18-year-old son, and then I've got my elderly 78-year-old mother, and myself and my husband all under one roof. So it's a little mix of different generations here. How that's related to the word economics, as the prior comment was made, it's in all honesty, I'm just going to throw it out there, it's much needed. It's expensive to live on this island, and all of us trying to go separately wasn't going to work financially. All of us under one roof, we have to put our resources together in order to make this home run. And with not only that, the dollar sign and the economic piece is really important, but there's a lot more value in the combining of our family ties under one roof. That's what's really important to us and has a lot more value than the dollar sign. But the dollar sign, that is a leading factor. It is a leading factor. We're very fortunate to have our family home and family land here on the island still that my grandpa started many, many years ago as a Filipino farmer. And we are fortunate to still have it, and hopefully we'll be able to remain having it. But I totally believe and appreciate being able to have that multi-generational setup right now. A lot of families aren't lucky or are not fortunate enough to be able to do that. So we're very blessed in that aspect. But the financial piece is real. That's real. If any one of us decided to move out and do our own thing in our own life, it would be a big struggle financially. If my mom wanted to go do her own thing, if me and my husband wanted to go do our thing, and my son, 18-year-old son now, just graduated, wanted to go out and do his own thing, the dollar signs wouldn't be there. To be honest, the dollar signs would not be there for us. So we're helping each other go through what our economic times are. And it works out. We make it work. There are bumpy times in the road, bumpy days, good days, bad days. But all in all, we all love waking up together. My son loves having his grandma in the house. My, grandma loves having grandson in the house, keeping youth and elders under one roof. Priceless. You can't put a dollar sign on that. And because it keeps all of us really healthy in our heart, the positive, the love under one roof is amazing. And so I just wanted to add that little piece in there. I know this is about economics, but economic piece is a big piece of multi-generational living in today's world on this island.
Yeah,
so
it totally is. And I know quite a lot of elders who are feeling like they want to downsize. So they're getting ready to sell their house and then discover that they're going to have to move to Idaho to be able to get something back. And I was talking to the foot care gals, and they were saying the same thing out throughout the county, that with their latest appraisal bump, a lot of people are feeling scared. Like a family home that's been in a family for generations, maybe it's a modest home here on the island. And yet if you sell and reap that big bucks, where are you going to go? That is really a difficult dilemma for a lot of people. And yeah, I feel like I did know one woman who actually made a point of buying smaller lots and spec building small houses and selling them affordably to teachers. That was a wonderful gift. I think she did 6 or 8 of them. What a way to spend. I thought that was just such a beautiful investment in this community, and I really honor that. But not everybody has the heart to do that, and not everybody's family is going to let them do that. But there's a lot of balancing to do when you're sitting on what on paper looks like it might be a fortune, but isn't going to spend like a fortune if you do sell. I think that dilemma is really tough for our elders, especially. And Rita, you brought up a really good point that there is, if you're living in a in Finch Place or Winslow Arms or something like that, you don't maybe you need a car. You can walk a lot of places. It's very accessible. And as Reed said, we're really hoping to get the circulating bus and asking the city to offer more of that kind of small scale, very local ride share kind of thing might be a step toward making this island remain affordable.
Well, I'm so happy to see community pharmacy downtown. Want to support them because having that kind of resource in a confined area, meaning that if you could get to downtown and you could do shopping, ideally you could see, in the good old days, you could see a doctor here, but it's still in the same area, basically. I guess Virginia Mason is not that far away. We could use a couple more doctor's offices. And healthcare could be a little more affordable, but you know, there are lots of pieces to this pie. And I also think that while, you know, what Lena is saying is absolutely correct, what we were hearing earlier about people, what Rita was saying about people of maybe the same general generation, but sharing resources, living in community somewhere, maybe like the mobile home park or like Finch Place, where there's a lot of collaboration and you can sort of help make ends meet, especially if you're looking at things like support for housekeeping or Meals on Wheels or that kind of thing.
And Judy tried to get in. Judy, do you still have one to say?
I'm
Get
here.
in?
Yeah, I am here. And I want a couple of things. One is, how about, I don't know this about, I mean, I agree what you're talking about and the money. And if you look in the real estate in the newspaper, it starts with $1 million, okay? And then up to 3, and I think once there was 5 million or something. And I suppose about 3 families or 5 families, because they're so big houses that, but of course that would be, it was not realistic. But I'm wondering about other towns, like Paulsbo. I don't know anything about that. Is that an area, because it's you know, because it's close, it's a nice little town. I have no idea if there are housing there that is relatively, you know, that a person could buy there. And so, or is that sort of, I don't know if it has really also a high letter of sale, and I don't know, and I don't see that in the newspaper about Paul's sales of all kinds of apartments or in anything else. Maybe, well, I guess, well, I don't know about that, and maybe other people do, other towns around. Maybe, I mean, you may not want to go to Bremerton or Silverdale, but there may be opportunities there. But you will, of course, be having to leave Bainbridge Island.
Well, actually, unfortunately, the bumps are all over the place. And I've been hearing from friends who live in Silverdale in very modest homes that they're almost tripling, and some of them are doubling. So they're having the same kind of boom. Rents have increased very, very significantly everywhere. And it's really widespread. It's not just here, but definitely throughout Kitsap, the prices are extremely high. And it's very hard to find a place that's affordable. And as you say, if you're older and this is your community and this is where your family is, and you have to go live somewhere where you don't know anybody and you don't have transportation, it's not a healthy environment for you for the most part. Sorry, Lena, did you want to jump in again?
Yes, thank you, Anne. After you listened to you speak, I just want to echo that. You're absolutely right. I have a lot of friends who are kind of in my age group, within 5 or 10 years. I'm in my late 50s, for those who don't know, and they are renting homes both on the island, Suquamish, Kingston, and Paulsbo area, and the homeowners, and it's been a big flux in the last year, are turning around and selling. And so a lot of these renters with their kids, their families are having to find other affordable housing. I want to say 90%, let's say out of 10 people I know, 9 of them are having to go to Bremerton and farther because that's where the affordability is. Yet they work here in Paulsbo, or maybe at a salon on the island, or, you know, or something like that. So they are getting moved out housing wise because of price.
Yeah.
Renters are having a tough time finding stuff locally where they work, or their kids are going to school here
I
because
just
they lived
wanted-
here.
Chip in and say what is, we're also moving other children. Those families are taking our children. Our schools are going down precipitously because we can't keep the families here or house the families.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a huge loss to our community as well. You're right, Marcy. Actually, Marcy, you started to say earlier that you didn't feel like that we'd got off track, that we weren't still talking about economic diversity. So one of the questions I was going to put out is like, what do you think it is? Like, what is that? What do we mean when we say that?
Well,
It's
what we
good.
talked a lot about during all the meetings we had over affordable housing, it was the people working. It is the workers. It's keeping our workers, our firefighters, our police, our teachers, and all of the people who serve us on the TNC and Safeway, etc. That we need to house them too. That's the economic diversity. So it's more than just. And as a senior, I'm much more interested in housing seniors. But even finding an accessible rental for a senior is exceedingly difficult.
Yeah.
There are very, very few of those, unless, and you have to be low income. I didn't realize to what degree until one of the HRB meetings. Where actually, you're right about there's a lot. You get the low income is now like $42,000 or $48,000. So it's a lot more than I had no idea that as an annual income. They don't count assets, they count your actual cash income.
Right.
So it's much higher than it used to be. And also the property tax is the other thing. Read to be sure that people start to think in terms of as the prices go up, sort of the property taxes. And there are those programs where they can ask for help with the property tax. And I've just heard that from another area where people are being priced out, not by the pricing, but by the property tax and the old home they live in. They can no longer afford to pay their property tax, and that they need help. And we can get that in the state of Washington or in the county of Kitsap anyway.
Right. We should do a program on that. Good idea. Rita.
I'm going to interrupt just to let you know that we are going to be talking with Phil Cook, our county assessor, on July 11th, Monday, July 11th. So put that down on your calendars, and I'll let Rita go ahead. Sorry.
The other thing I was going to say too, as far as like having, affordable housing for teachers and firemen, we have our own students here. They graduate from high school, they go to college. They can't afford to come back to be close to their families, a lot of them, and raise their children. And so we're also losing, the population diversity that we really want. And so enriches the community. We're older, we like each other, we're fine, but you know what? That's not, eventually we're all going to die. And then what are we going to have? An island that's going back to the, to the coyotes and the deer. But, it's something to think about, that we want to be able to bring the people that were raised here back here to invest in the community and to make it, diverse. And so you've got young children, old children, you've got people with disabilities, you've got all kinds of things. I'll be quiet now. Thanks.
That's such a good point, Judy.
No, I was just curious about this. I thought this is a fascinating topic. However, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 women. And it must be other people, men, who might also be involved in this issue.
They're all out working.
They were invited, you know, that's what I find with all the equity groups I attend. It's 90 to 99% women.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
everything that I am involved with about social justice, 90%, 99% women.
Yeah.
And I'm not to say that men don't have a role. And in some ways, I think it's great, because I have to say, in my early years, every single thing I did was run by white men. What directly or indirectly it was. And so I'm kind of thrilled that now women are doing some of the heavy lifting and picking up tools and learning how to be elder activists. I think it's awesome. It's something we all need to really do, right? So that part doesn't bother me. Plus, you know, women outlive men pretty significantly. And so it is our job to be leaders and to be activists and to be allies, helping things along. I did want to bring up something interesting that happened a little while ago. One of the parents who came to a program I was doing was very concerned because his son, who had graduated from college and is dating a transgender person, they were living in the daylight basement of the family home. And dad was saying, well, you know, they're both perfectly happy to be baristas. This is crazy. They have college degrees. They should be doing something worthwhile. And I was like, oh, ow. Do you hear yourself? Like, assuming that only white collar jobs are real and that they're not going to learn anything being a barista. And I was kind of pointing out, in I hope a fairly kind way, but maybe not, that sociologically, they're going to meet people in a new way. They're going to have a new lens. They're going to be the server. And they're going to see their community through a different filter and observe how people treat people, service people, right? And observe how things really roll here. And I think that is fascinating. And it would be like a year of public service for every kid. You know, how some countries do that. Switzerland, I think, right? Don't they all go out and do WPA projects or something? You know, I'd love to see something like that, because one thing that's real, I wish I'd seen this before. I found this great article in the Harvard Business Review. And it was talking about the untapped riches of people who are not upper middle class, and how today only 1/4, 25% of American households are middle and upper middle class, and everybody else is not, right? And that if you are not raised upper middle class, you tend to be kinder, more resilient, more compassionate, right? There's some really interesting stuff. And it's like, also, there's a tendency to work for the common good rather than your own. And that people raised in white supremacist culture, excuse me for going on, but, you know, tend to be selfish and self-indulgent. And whereas people who are born to lesser riches often are not. I'm not saying it's 100%, and he wasn't either, but the article's real. I will send it to everybody because I thought it was really intriguing. Sheila.
Yeah, I'd love to see it.
I was remembering that Pete Buttigieg and someone back even earlier than that had recommended that people coming out of high school have at least 2 years of public service before they go to college. And be it Vista, be it Peace Corps, be it whatever. But public service before they go on to college, and or to vocational school, or to whatever other school. And I like that idea. Of course, I like Pete Buttigieg, but I would like that anyway. I like the concept of going into another organization or into another milieu is so important.
It is, isn't it? Because otherwise you just have these filters. Judy.
This is for, Anne and other people too here. I'm impressed with the go and optimist of it. Just put a whoa, okay, this is great, and it's real, it's not fake. And anyway, I'm sure everybody else too, to just say, wow, there's hope. There's more than hope. There's action. And new ideas, as you said, and it's just wonderful.
It is, isn't it? You know, I think one of the interesting things for me is that a lot of us, as we get older, sort of step back. And I think that actually we could really consider stepping forward. We know how to navigate a lot of things that we didn't when we were younger. A lot of us have gained skills in communication that we maybe didn't have quite so much when we were younger. And, you know, this is a great time to share your skills and to step up and to be heard. And to, you know, you can bring all kinds of things into normal everyday conversation, as I discovered. Having a transgender daughter living with me has opened so many conversation opportunities for me. And it's like, again, normalizing things that people find at first maybe fear inspiring, or maybe they're off-putting. Living on Social Security, I have told some people that, and they have looked at me like I was a leper, like, like with horror and shock. And I was like, I'm not ashamed of this. I put my kids through college. I mean, I worked really hard, and I, like Rita, I wasn't able to do all those things and amass a big chunk of change, but you know, we're fine. But we're modest. And I think that is a horrifying idea for some folks. When did that happen, right? When did a modest living start being horrifying instead of just like perfectly okay? We've had this huge cultural shift, and I think that's worth looking at. Prosperity means so many different things to different people. And I think being really clear in ourselves as elders what prosperity means to us is really helpful for our kids and our grandkids, right? I mean, we are teachers, we are elders. This is our place to step up and teach. And I just feel like it's something we can all do, and it's something probably we ought to do, right?
Yeah.
Amen. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand.
It's okay, go,
I
Lena.
probably should. I totally agree. I completely agree. And again, being in a multi-generational home, you know, an 18-year-old viewpoint on one side, my son, and my mother, you know, her late 70s going on 80s on the other side, and me kind of in the middle. I 100% agree with you. 100% agree with you about bringing a lot of these things to normalize a lot of these conversations, and being humble, being raised in a poor family. I'm just going to say the word poor. You know, we were a berry picking family, blue collar, paycheck to paycheck kind of, you know, families. But we didn't know, and then I'm going to be completely honest, I didn't know I was poor growing up. That was normal. My grandpa would take us, my grandpa would take all of us kids, and there were a lot of us grandkids, to the beach and cook a pot of rice on the beach on a fire and dig clams and fish right from the beach. And we had lunch and dinner that day on the beach. And that was normalized. People would look at that now and go, what? You did what? But, you know, you're right. The perception on how we look at things is different. I think reeling it back to being kind of simplifying life and living a little more humble, and not so much putting your worth and value and happiness on what you're driving, what your house looks like, what your clothes, you know, on the superficial stuff, I should, for lack of a better word, and putting value on more of the human side. Mm-hmm. That to me is where the richness is. And I just wanted to throw that out there. I was raised with that kind of mentality and that kind of upbringing. Hopefully I'll be able to pass that on to my son, who will take that and run. But he's kind of also an 18-year-old. Today's world is in the middle, because what they're being raised at is kind of far detached from what I was raised at, with being able to feed my family from the beach, as opposed to going through a drive-through that the kids do today. You know, so little different perspectives, but trying to find a medium in the middle somewhere. So
yeah, exactly. Thank you. Right. I remember when I first came to Bainbridge, and I think I've said this before, one of the older farmer guys said to me that Bainbridge was a blue collar island with a diamond necklace, because all the rich people lived on the waterfront, right? And it was all the fancy houses. There wasn't only, though, because I remember lots of other houses that weren't so fancy that were still on the waterfront. But it definitely was like there were two cultures here, at least, right? Maybe more. And that, I feel like it's a real loss. And so when I'm, brought up the whole idea of economic diversity, that's kind of what I was thinking about too. It's like, do we still want to make room for the families that have been here a long, long time, and bring a huge treasure, not just of history, but of culture and of ideas, of being comfortable with modest living. I just feel like we're missing this really significant piece here. And that, again, we can talk about things like this to people and help normalize, or at least horrify somebody, right?
Annoy, that's one of the A's in idea, right?
Right.
Yeah, I feel like growing up on South Whitby, as I did, at that point, the economic diversity or distance was not as great. And so there were, there were some examples of that, but you'd have a lot more mix of culture and economic circumstances in my Boy Scout troop or in my high school teams or whatever. And so things like what you were describing, Lena, would show up in the way that we hung out together. And what looked odd maybe to somebody in a different economic strata was not so odd, because you had friends who were living in that manner or whatever. And I think that that helped us be less other to each other, be more of a community, even though there were circumstances of sort of economic circumstances that were different. And that's good.
Oh.
I feel like to some degree, the history of Bainbridge Island and the response that we got when the government required all the Japanese and Japanese Americans to leave was a result of that kind of richness of the community. It could be clearly seen that there was injustice going on, and that's because we knew those people well. And if you don't know them, then you don't. It's not your deal. Just let it go on.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's a cost that we will bear if we continue the way we're going.
Well,
Yeah.
I think having forums like this and meetings like this is having the dialogue is the first step. Saying the words out loud with each other is the first step. And so when we start normalizing these conversations to where they're not stigmatized and, oh my God, I don't feel comfortable talking about this kind of stuff, and people are kind of, shying away from it, we're not going to see change and acceptance and bringing stuff to the light that we're doing right now. Yep. We're doing it. And so I don't have a lot to say into that, but I just want to applaud you guys for even having this forum and this platform to be able to talk about stuff like this, because it's important. It's important. So thank you.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you, Lena. And it is important. Marcy? You're muted again, Marcy.
When we came here 30 years ago, it was a group of people who wanted to work on this themselves. When the mobile home park decided to save itself from being sold, it was the people who lived there who brought it all about and who worked with other members of the community. So we don't have anyone right now. We're depending on HRB to pull it off for everybody across the island. There are no people working together right now to bring about a change, as far as I know. So that's all.
Yeah, no, that's a big difference. We're actually having a big conversation / mature adult argument with the county assessor about the nature of the mobile home park and why, because we gave up our development rights, we shouldn't be charged as prime downtown real estate. And I don't even know how that's going to go, but I'll tell you, if it doesn't go well, that may change the way that this park works. And this is 50 homes that, by and large, are still pretty affordable. 40 of them are older. About 10 of them are actually pretty new, and that's pumping everything up. And I feel like this is really kind of a little model of what's happening in a lot of places too. That this sort of crazy cultural drive to like more, better, up, spend, or whatever. It's kind of making us sick and crazy. Just my humble opinion. Rita.
One other thing is, as Marcy was saying, that, people working, there's nobody working together. When you apply for, there's low income housing here, you have to make, every place has got a different application, and there's no like central place I found to go and say you could get on a list and you would, and it would kind of be a universal thing. It's been kind of crazy. I've just started this process, and I was telling a friend of mine, I said, it's just too much. I just put it away because it's crazy. So it would be helpful, not only, not for me, for people like me, because as you get older, you get tired sometimes. You just go, it's not that I'm not smart and I'm not capable, but it just is so hard sometimes to be able, and it's such a struggle. And you're thinking about, am I going to end up under the bridge as bag lady, or what? And because there are a lot of people who that is a possibility it could happen to.
Yeah, and
so I think it's just something as a community for us to think about.
I think you're right that the application form asks you to list every place you lived since you were born, practically. That in itself is a hurdle for some of them. And you're right. Though I have to say, people can always bring something like that to the senior center or to the helpline and get a hand with it. But are they going to? Do people know that? Does it feel like an embarrassment? There are hurdles in place for getting help and asking for help.
And it's not, once you do that application, then it's up to you to stay in touch to see where you are on the list, which means calling all of those different places all the time. And if you move, then you have to reapply because your address has changed. And so if they don't know how to reach you within 24 hours after they notify you, then the next person on the list gets it. It's pretty complicated. We like to make sure that people of medium aren't taking advantage of the system. And so, boy, we're going to make it tough.
Anybody else? Or have we just stunned you all with our eloquence? Mickey.
Well, I've been here over 50 years, and I sometimes is simply amazed. I can go around the corner and there's a bunch of brand new identical houses being built. And to me, it's kind of ghastly to see every house alike, except maybe they're painted different. And my first house was $10,000, if you can believe it. Mm-hmm. And my payments were $100 a month. What happened? It's just so sad sometimes. You go down a road and all the new names, it's phenomenal to me. I can't believe how much the island has all of a sudden burst. Well, not all of a sudden, but since COVID, it seems like it has burst. No homes, nothing available. Then you wonder, why are people moving here? So expensive.
Kat?
Yeah, I appreciate this conversation. It's one of the first meetings I've attended, and I was curious to hear what people thought about this issue. I listened to city council meetings, different cities. This is the same. Sorry about that. This is the same topic that is raised in many communities. Housing affordability has become a huge issue. Most of us that have our homes wouldn't have them if we had to buy them today.
Right.
And that's just a fact. You know, it's some of us have benefited from our parents, or just being in the right place at the right time, you know, when your property is sold. And it was interesting. I went through some old trunks from my parents, and I came across booklets when my dad was in the Navy. When they got out and they were looking for a house in Southern California, they went to different housing developments, and those booklets had the different layouts of the homes, and there were all different price points. Today, when you go into a new community, they're all priced at around the same amount. There's no consideration for different economic needs. And I'm afraid to say that I think these are some unintended consequences from development codes and planning in cities and counties. And, you know, and this is not a Washington issue. If you look across the country, prices have gone up. So we're clearly not doing something right. I don't know what the answers are, but I think having these conversations is a good place to start. And, you know, perhaps something in the community or county or state will come about as more people start talking about this issue.
I totally agree. And Katie, would you be willing to say what you put in the chat, just to kind of call that out a little bit? I don't know if she's still there. But if you didn't see what she wrote, she said, there are some community members getting together to take action. An example is coming up at the city council meeting tomorrow night. Please sign in to listen to the public comments to get to know some of the folks who are trying to change our culture. Folks who want us to become more able to have conversations like this. And that is true. And I guess it's true. I could send you all a link to how to join Kitsap Erase if you're interested, which is an equity group that it's a coalition. So you can pick and choose your topics and get involved with pretty much any aspect of it that you want. And if anyone is interested, I will send it to you. Maybe I'll just send it to you and you can look at it or not, right? I'll send it to you with the article because they just posted a thing saying, how do we get more members? People don't even know about this group. But it is an active group, and it was especially active over the last few years when we were all Zooming because we couldn't get together outside. And I think what I'd like to say about this kind of conversation is we need to keep doing it even now when we are starting to meet in public, even now when it may not seem as important to have this kind of conversation. It's just as important as ever.